Okay, in this demonstration I'm going to be showing you how to make a ceramic phone speaker out of slabs. So in class we talked about 3 hand building techniques. We talked about pinch, which we use to make the body of our whistles, and then we talked about coil, which we use to make the mouthpiece and different attachments. That's where we roll that out with our hands. The other one is slab. Slab is where you roll clay out into sheets like a pancake. So you thin it out and you roll that out, and then you use those sheets of pancakes or sheets of clay to construct your project. So you're going to start with a much bigger piece of clay to make something out of slab. So to begin, we want to always wedge our clay. That gets rid of our air bubbles, compresses our clay, gets it ready to work with. So with this bigger piece of clay, it's going to be harder to use our hands to do that. So we're going to use the table. We're going to first just throw it down on one side. Then we're going to pick it up and rotate it. Throw it down on that side. Pick it up, rotate it, throw it down again. Now it's going to start to get wide, so we're going to switch it up, top to bottom. So we want this to stay kind of in a little brick. So it starts to get wide, just hit the top, hit the bottom, and keep rotating. You want to do this about 15 to 20 times, so kind of keep track in your mind. Once you get that, you're going to start to thin the clay out so that we can start to use the clay as a sheet, as a slab. So we want this to be wide so that our template for our phone speaker is going to fit. So as we do this, we want to make sure that we're keeping our slab wide and not like making a big long skinny snake. So you're going to just pick 2 sides, slam it down on one side, rotate it, and do the other side. Now I'm going to switch directions because, like I mentioned, I want this to be wide. So I'm going to switch and kind of rotate all the way around the piece of clay. When I can see that my clay is about 1/2 inch thick, then I'm going to stop and I'm going to start to roll this out using a rolling pin. Rotate my board here. Okay. So, and you'll need this canvas board for this to happen because at this point, your clay is going to get stuck to the table if you roll it out. So you want to make sure you're working on a piece of canvas. There's boards underneath the front table, and there's also loose sheets of canvas if we run out of boards. So you're going to grab a set of battens. These are just pieces of wood that are 1/4 inch thick. Make sure you have 2 battens that are the same size. You're going to lay these on either side of your clay. Then you're going to take your rolling pin, and you want this rolling pin to be as wide as your battens are. So you can see that this is going to be a little bit too narrow for how I have those set up. So I'm going to need to kind of readjust my clay, move my battens in, and then I'm going to get my rolling pin to work on top of that. So for this part, you need to stand up because you're going to need the leverage of your body. So your rolling pin is on top of your wood, clay in between. You're going to lean forward and roll this out like you're making sugar cookies or maybe like you're making biscuits. Then I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So these battens are to keep our clay 1/4 inch thick. That makes our clay just about the right thickness to be able to work with it, and a little bit of leeway just in case the slab happens to be just a little bit too small. So I'm going to move my battens, and I'm going to check to see if my template's going to fit. And just about fits. So you can see it's going to hang over just a little bit right there. So this is no need for panic. We don't have to start all the way over. All you need to do is take your rolling pin and just do a quick roll by hand without your battens. Just one. Make sure it stays about the same thickness all the way across. And then you'll see that your template is going to fit on there. So don't start all the way over. If that happens, just go ahead and make it a tiny bit thinner. Before I cut my template, I'm going to use a sponge. I'm going to get a cup of water in my sponge. I'm going to wring my sponge all the way out. Remember, we don't want this soaking wet, so we're just going to wring that all the way out into our cup. Once we do that, you're going to drag your sponge across the surface of your clay. This is just going to, pop any air bubbles if you have any of those, fix any cracks if you have any of that. And I'll flip it over and I'll go ahead and do the other side too. You also notice there's some texture from the canvas. So speaking of texture, at this point, if you wanted to add some texture to your phone speaker, you can look in the box that has texture, and you can find something that you want to roll in, and this will give you an all-over texture. It will make your phone speaker look great, and it's just a simple process. So I'm going to take whatever object that I am rolling into my slab, and I'm going to place it on top of my slab. Then I'm just going to take the rolling pin, and I'm just going to roll that into the surface. And I'm making sure, you can kind of see that it flattened out, and so I'm kind of making sure that it's flush with the surface there. Then I'm going to pull that up, and you'll see that that leaves a beautiful texture. So it's just an option, but it's something that could easily give you something beautiful and simple. Place your phone speaker on top of your slab, and now you're just simply going to trace around the template for the phone speaker. Oops. Make sure you get all the way up next to it. Have to make sound effects. All right, now save this piece right here where it cuts out in the center, or a piece like that size. I'm going to save this to the side. Everything else I'm going to peel away from my template, and I'm going to go ahead and put that clay back into a ball. Then I'm going to return that clay to the bag so that this doesn't dry out while I work on everything else. You can give it a little wedge and put that clay back in the bag for whistles and coils. Once you have that done, then you're going to start to join the edges of your phone speaker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the knife, I'm going to lay it on the tip of the knife on the canvas, and I'm simply just going to drag the knife through the clay and just shave away a bit of this edge. This is something called mitering, and this is going to give me a little less clay on the edge of my phone speaker so that when I join those seams, I don't have a big bulky seam. It's going to be more like 1/4 of an inch, like the rest of it. So you can kind of see that clay is now at an angle on the edge right there. So I'm going to do the top over here, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the opposite side on the opposite, so this is on the top and on the opposite side, and so I'm going to do the bottom on the opposite side, if that makes sense. It's easy to see with the texture. So one side textured, one side not textured, opposite. Same thing, drag your knife through, tip on the board. That's going to give you that angle. So just kind of lay it back there. Once you have that angle, you're going to score and score. Of course, add your slip. Always, always, always when we connect. Then you're going to pick this up, and you're going to roll this little semicircle into a full circle. So right there across. Now with the phone speaker in my hand, so you can see I'm going to have a seam right here. So my phone speaker is in my hand like this, and I'm going to use the counter pressure of my hand to seal this seam. This is just like when we made our whistles and we used our thumb, windshield wipered our thumb across the surface. Okay, so you can see that I got rid of some of my texture, but I don't need to worry about that either. I have a trick to hide that. So now we have our phone speaker kind of rolled up in progress. So we're going to take that extra little bit that I told you to hold on to. You're going to place your phone speaker on top, and then you're going to just kind of trace around that little back circle. It doesn't really need to be perfect, just so you have just about the right amount of clay. So I'm going to pull this off, and I can see where I trace the circle. Cut that out all the way, return my extra clay to the bag so it doesn't dry out. Then I'm going to score this. And I'm going to score this end of my phone speaker. So this is going to give a backing so that the sound has something to reverberate off of. It's going to echo off the back and project forward. So it's going to be more like an amplifier than an electric speaker, but it sure does work well. So once you have this on here, slipped and scored, then you're just going to take that little disc that you made and you're just going to windshield wiper, windshield wiper. Now on this one, if you have texture here, you're going to have to redo the texture here or come up with a different idea. Like maybe you put little dots around here to kind of suggest that the texture goes away. So you can see I have a little bit too much clay. I'm just going to take a little bit of that off. If that happens, no big deal. Just pinch it off and get rid of it. Okay, so I have the back of my speaker. I can go ahead and tap that a couple times. Then I'm just going to, on the side where I have my seam, so now I just have like a little cone of clay. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to lay it on the side that has my seam. Boop, just like that. Now this is going to want to collapse because the clay is going to be soft and there's going to be a little bit of gravity involved. So before you allow it to collapse, hold your hand in there. Then you're going to use your finger and you're going to pull the edge down. So I'm kind of making a flat side for this to sit on. So you can see where my finger drug from the back to the front corner. Same thing over here. I'm going to drag my finger down. It's going to make my speaker flat and it won't roll when my phone is inside of it. Then I'm going to smooth out the seam that's on the inside. So here I don't need to use my hand because I have the table for counter pressure. So I'm just going to smooth out the seam on the inside, make sure that clay is completely joined. We don't want any air trapped there or we will end up with an explosion. So make sure you join all the way across. You can see I'm being very careful. Using my fingers first. You could also use a sponge. Boom. So now you see speaker collapsing. Grab some paper towels. You're just going to ball them up. I'm using a plastic bag because I didn't grab any paper towels. You know me. So I'm just going to use this plastic bag and ball it up inside of here. And then that's going to keep my phone speaker open. So I need to do some craftsmanship. So I'm looking here at the edge. I have a lot of crusty bits. I have some places where I cut. So I'm just going to use my thumb. You can use this a tool if you want. You can use a sponge if you want. But I'm just going to kind of fix up my edges, do a little bit of craftsmanship. We don't want anything sharp on a phone speaker because then, you know, scratch your phone screen and we don't want that to happen. So make sure that everything is smoothed out. Once you have it designed, you have everything that you want on there, then you're going to take your knife and you're going to measure back 1 knuckle. So from the top of your nail to your knuckle, you're going to measure back that far from the end of your phone speaker. This is where we're going to add the phone. Then we're going to do about 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 of an inch right there. And we're going to cut this little slot open. Okay. So you might have paper towels in the way. You might have plastic in the way, whatever you chose to stuff this open with. Then we're going to peel this open. So what I want you to do is I want you to, without me here, if you're working on this phone speaker today with a substitute, I want you to cut a hole for your speaker so we know exactly where that's going to, or for your phone, so we know exactly where that's going to go. But then you're just going to kind of wait to make any adjustments here. So next time when I see you on Thursday, bring your phone to class and we're going to measure and make sure that your phone's going to fit in that. So do not put these on the shelves to dry when you're done. Just wrap them up. I will check them next time. That way we'll make sure it's right before we fire it or before we let it dry. So now you can see you have your phone speaker all set up. Of course, if you didn't roll any texture into the surface, this would be where you would design it. So, you know, I've had kids in the past make this a monster mouth. They put teeth, they put polka dots, they put all kinds of claws and things like that. You could make song lyrics on here. You could draw things into the surface. You could add a little creature somewhere on it, whatever you wanted to do. But make sure that it at least has some texture and it has been designed. So that's what I'm kind of looking for. At the end, when you're done, go ahead and wrap it up, put it on your shelf, and then we'll check in together and we will get it fired.